Yeah, Starfield. I was astounded at the amount that they
Yeah,
showed us and the amount of detail, customization, just everything in that game. It
just
had it
all of
all.
it. And I feel like the trailer did such a good job of making it feel like a Bethesda game. As silly as that sounds, like the
Janky as shit.
trailer. No, no,
I was
not
going to
the
say, is
trailer.
that a good thing?
But like the interview with the devs, they really brought
Yeah.
it back and made it like, this is our game. You can see how much work we've put into this. You can just tell that each one of those people that we saw were just experts in their field.
Mm.
You know that team's going to be the cream of the crop, and Todd Howard's long vision is finally coming to,
Yeah. His very long
well,
vision. His 25 years in the
25,
making.
yeah.
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
Starfield has been, but it's kind of for me personally, I am relieved about what I've seen with Starfield first
Mm,
and foremost because I kind of went into this evening and watching this showcase cautiously optimistic. I mean, we know
mm,
that Bethesda games have a rich history of being janky messes. The gameplay, no matter what people say about Skyrim, I know it's a massively adored game. Same with Fallout. The gameplay sucks in those games. Like, there's
yeah, it
no,
really
you
does.
cannot convince me that it's good in those terms. But you play the games for the story, the exploration, the characters, the choices,
Freedom,
the
yeah.
freedom, and it feels like Starfield has all of that and then some. But to cap off the point I was making, it just feels like a next gen game. It looks like they've really improved on the combat specifically. There were some
Yeah.
moments when, the character was jumping around and throwing grenades and aiming down sights that it looked like a first person, like a proper first person
Yeah.
shooter. It
Yeah,
looked
Mm.
yeah.
good.
Like you were making comparisons to Call of Duty, which is a great comparison to make. I
Mm.
just feel like I remember growing up wanting a game that was like kind of real life. Like I can go around and do anything I like. And I know Fallout have got elements of that, and there are other games out there such as like Star Citizen and No Man's Sky where you do have the freedom to go and do what you like, but they are limited and capped in certain elements. Like No Man's Sky is great in regards to exploration, but then there's no real deep story. There's no real
Yeah.
like communicating with people. They've obviously brought customization and base building into the game, but it still feels, even though that game has got amazing scope in what it does best in regards to exploration, it's still very shallow in regards to like deep story and like character development and
Yeah. And like the
like,
It,
world, like what's out there, what's
yeah,
what's driving this narrative forward, what's
yeah,
making me go out and explore.
it's very
that's it.
limited in what it does. One thing, like we brought up, Bethesda's jank, and it's almost become their trademark. But one thing they've always been brilliant at
It's
is
called the
world building.
Bethesda charm, actually,
No,
Connor.
it's
So
jank. It's jank. Um, they've always been good at world building. I think that's why
yeah.
people still play Skyrim now. 12 years later, they've re-released it 400 times, and it looks like they've finally built everything. They can build these worlds, and they talked about it a lot in their directs about they want it to feel lived in. They want it's not just brand new and shiny. It looks like these worlds have been touched. These settlements have been worn down. They've degraded over the years, and then they've built this engine, and they've taken the combat, which has always been awful. That's why they had VATs for years, because they can't do gunpowder
They didn't. They
mechanics.
didn't know how to animate guns shooting
Yeah,
properly.
so they've just, I think obviously they've built a new engine for the first time in 20 years, which is
Yeah.
shocking, to be honest. And then they've taken everything up a level, and I've been really cautious of Starfield because I don't think Bethesda have been good for a long time.
Mm.
But I think I'm not trying to get too excited for it because I've been
Mm.
burnt by Bethesda before, but it looks like they've hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when I was looking at those sunsets and the guy was talking about like the lighting of the planets is completely how the lighting should be on that world. Obviously it's a game, but where the position of this planet in regards to the sun and the
Mm.
conditions on the planet will impact the lighting and it just looked phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
I can imagine. I remember years ago when Skyrim was being teased, and they were saying like, "Oh, and you'll want to take in the views because the game's gorgeous." And I no joke,
Mm.
at that time when Skyrim's graphics were probably okay at that time, thinking like, "This looks fucking shit." Like they were hyping up about these
Yeah.
vistas, and I couldn't give a shit about them. But this looks another level, like absolutely gorgeous.
Mm.
Yeah, the new engine does look good because yeah, I don't really see the charm of Bethesda games personally. Like, and
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that is to do with the visuals. Like, they don't look great, and if I kind of want that as part of my experience. So Starfield looks
Mm,
like it's got that. I like that the worlds are going to be procedurally generated as well,
yeah,
Yeah. That
so
was interesting actually,
it will add a
because
lot of variety.
and
I thought we
I feel
probably all
like
thought that parts of the game or large parts of the game would be
yeah.
pre-rendered and sort of
Mm.
constructed.
But we said this when we were watching the showcase together, where like procedural generation has definitely come a long way from like the procedural elements of games back in the day. Like, for instance, with Terraria, it's just a world seed, and there's many games like that, obviously Minecraft and whatnot, where you'll just the world will change, but there will be elements that won't work because there's not enough like, if this is like this, then don't do this, this, and this. Where it feels like in Starfield, I have no idea, but there must be a very strict and very well thought out. This planet is like this, and the scale of this planet, and the conditions of this planet. So that means that only this category of wildlife can live here, which means only this category
Yeah.
of fauna can live here, and so on and so on, and only place a structure here if these conditions are met. So you can imagine the procedural elements are extremely well thought out, because
Yeah.
to risk 1,000 planets and let every player's planet procedurally generate, that's
Mm.
risky.
I've
So
Yeah.
seen No Man's Sky do it, and obviously that game come out to a lot of hate at the time,
Yeah.
but it's always been great. Their procedural generated planets and like how far you can explore in the solar system and galaxies. So that game's what, 8 years old now, I think.
Mm.
It's a long time.
wow,
So that tech, you've seen AI jump up in the last 2
Mm.
years, how quickly that's generated. So that tech,
yeah,
and they've got Microsoft on board now with their divisions, with they specialize in this sort of tech. So I'm really looking forward just to getting lost and
Yeah.
yeah,
finding out what planets are out
yeah.
there.
I
Yeah.
watched an IGN thing the other day where they were just like interviewing their in-house editors or whatever, and a couple of them were like huge Bethesda fans, so they picked them for the interview about Starfield, and it was purely they were just obviously looking to make some content. But this one guy said something that I got me totally excited. It was like the thing that he was most excited for when he plays Starfield
Mm.
is the moment where the game stops holding your hand. So
Mm.
obviously when you start playing
Yeah.
the game's going to be sort of semi half directing you to
Mm.
go and speak to this person and go and
Yeah.
get your ship for the first time and go and
Well,
do
we
this
saw
for
it.
the
We
first
saw it
time.
in the clip, didn't we? Oh, here, take this watch. You'll need it
Yeah.
to navigate. Like when you get past that bit and it
Yeah.
opens up properly.
The first time the game's like, cool, go and do what you want to do. So
It's
Yeah.
always a special moment in Bethesda games because
yeah,
you do the tutorial in Fallout 3 and then you leave the vault and then it's just
that's
like,
it.
right, off you go.
Yeah.
You can go
You
any
could go and do the
direction.
main quest.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that bit's all, they're very good at that. They've
Yeah.
done it with Oblivion, they've done it with Skyrim and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
So
it's
what is the
exciting.
Starfield version going to be? What is the vault opening going to be in Starfield?
Yeah. That wow
Mm.
moment. Maybe when
Yeah.
you land on a distant planet for the first time. You see
Oh.
a sunset for the first time on an
And I
alien
was
planet.
Yeah, and like going back to the combat slightly, like when that guy was showing the weapon variants and them saying that they've got more weapons and attachments in this game than any game that they've made in the past,
Yeah.
I just can't. And then all of the weapon customization, I can
Mm.
just feel like you're going to have such a journey on this game, unlike
Yeah.
any game. Because think of any RPG, and you're like The Witcher, for instance, that's still fresh in my mind. You are having a fantastic journey playing that game, but you are Geralt and you are stuck in the very sort of good, but you are in that quest line. The end result is always going to be the same. You can make your own story playing this game. You want to be a
Yeah.
pirate and you want to go and pillage ships out in the vastness of space? Go ahead. You want to be a trader? Seems like you can
Yeah.
probably do that too.
Well, it's an interesting, point you make there, Ben, because I think the maybe the one question mark I would have about the game at the moment is what is the story? Where
Mm,
do we kind of go to get that narrative pull? Is it going to be there? Because they've really kind of emphasized the fact that this is essentially a space sim where you make your character, you build their backstory, you set their skills, what they look like. The character customization looked just ridiculously in depth. And
yeah,
I know that there are people out there. I mean, I'm not one of these people. I like to just go preset guy number 7, start, because I just want to play the game. But there are people out there who will spend 2-3 hours, maybe more, really fine tuning their character, which is
yeah,
great. And that aspect of the game looks great. But when you get into the game, what's the story? We kind of keep hearing about this whole finding the answer to humanity's biggest questions, what's out there in the deepest reaches of space. I'd like to know more about that stuff.
mm,
That's my biggest concern about Starfield. Obviously, people are going to be playing this game for a decade, and they keep going, "Oh, it's their own story." Skyrim's story, I can't tell you what it was at all. Fallout 4's story was awful, and
yeah. It was
they
rubbish.
it's not the games they make, but there is going to be a huge proportion of people that just want to play the story,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's not their strength.
Mm,
They're very good at making games where it's your story. Like, go and do what
Yeah,
you like, and then
mm,
if you want, there's a main quest over it.
but I
yeah.
feel like I can see there'd be a lot of people who would never even do the main story.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
kind of going on from what you've said,
They want to
where
play a space pirate simulator, and they've got
yeah,
their platform to do it, and
Or
that's all they're
that's
they
doing.
just
it.
want to go and build a load of outposts and build up
Yeah.
a colony somewhere. Yeah.
I mean,
And the
with
main story is just a
supposedly,
thing they can do.
well, exactly. I mean, and with supposedly over 1,000 explorable planets that you
Mm.
can land on, like the possibilities for what you can do in this game really
Yeah.
are endless. Not to sound too fucking corny about it, but yeah,
Well, that's it. And then there was an interesting part in the IGN. They interviewed Todd Howard after the Starfield Direct, and they asked him like, "So, how are you going to approach?" Obviously, he wasn't trying to understand like the future plan for what Starfield's got ahead, but obviously, Fallout's and Skyrim's and whatnot, they've all received DLC. Like, well, how would you even go about? You can't add a new zone. They've got 1,000 planets, so. And
yeah,
he replied in saying that there will be like more singular stories that you'd be able to explore and do, but like
yeah.
there just seems like there's
They could
so
do like
much.
a fucking alien invasion DLC or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They could do anything. New
They did it in.
factions, an army that comes in from somewhere. I don't know.
It's a lot of factions like in Fallout 4. They'd unlock Nuka World and then the Raiders and stuff like that. I
Yeah,
think it'll be something like that where it'll be a raiding clan, and if you want to join them, you can join them and go and fuck up the rest of the universe.
yeah,
yeah,
So
and that's what makes the Bethesda games great. Once again, we said it before, but it's just that freedom, and I feel like there's no other game out there that I can think of that provides as much that this game is looking to provide the players, and also with that level of freedom. Like it's actually mind-boggling to think that a game of this scale is coming out when you had a game like um, Star Citizen that looked like it was trying to do what this is doing,
yeah.
but have kind of never really gone anywhere. I know the game has progressed quite a lot, but nothing in comparison to this. Like this game is going to be insane. I just
Yeah,
know it.
if they can pull it off, I mean, we're talking about a
Yeah.
generational sort of game here. From everything they've showed us, like I have never seen anything like this in video
No.
games, and people have tried the open world sort of space sim, be a pirate, be an explorer,
This is like
be
a
a
life
bounty hunter
sim.
or whatever. But this looks like they're actually doing
Ben's never going out again.
what yeah, they're actually doing what so many other developers have tried to do but have just kind of fallen short of it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a lot to sort of like. It feels like we're gushing over this game at the moment, and
Mm,
going straight off the back of what we've just seen. I think some of that is justified. Obviously, some of it's going to be a bit exaggerated. We're going to have to see how the game presents itself over the years and what
Mhm.
it's like when we actually play it. A couple of
yeah.
things to sort of mention: 30 frames per second on console. It's not been confirmed, but Todd
Mm,
Howard, like we said, didn't want to actually
um, He
say
didn't.
what the frame rate was gonna be on the console version of the game.
He did a podcast with Lex Friedman a few months ago, and I jumped in and out of it because it was like 3 hours long, and I like Todd, but I'm not listening to him for 3 hours. And then the 30 frames got brought up, and
Yeah.
he's of the mind like if the game's great, like 30 frames is no problem. Like
Yeah.
so, I think it will be capped at 30 on console to begin with. But that
Maybe
game's
they
going to
can
be.
work it out and push it up
But
a bit in future.
if the game's great, it's not going to matter too much. The
Yeah.
gunplay will feel like crap at 30 frames, but Red Dead's
Yeah.
30 frames on console. Last of Us 2's 30 frames on console. Like it was 30 frames on console. I don't think it'd be a huge issue if they are going to go like, well, in 3 months' time, it'll be 60 frames.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
If they plan on doing that, by the way, if they're planning on releasing a 60 frames per second patch, don't mention it. Just
no, just drop it.
release it when it's ready, because
Yeah.
you don't want like a Redfall situation where you're sort of promising stuff that's like down the line or whatever. Just avoid it. And yeah, I kind of tend to agree with that. I think if the game is good enough, there will be people who will be upset about it being 30 frames per
Yeah.
second. There will be. But if the game's good enough, I think it can be something that can be forgiven, especially if it's like a locked 30 frames per second and doesn't dip too much into the low 20s
Yeah.
or teens.
Yeah.
Locked 30 frames, I think most people will be okay with that.
Yeah. And like you said, I didn't realize a few of those games that you'd mentioned then, for instance. I didn't know Red Dead was 30 frames on console, for instance. I mean, it makes sense, but I didn't actually know that. But that is a game that you can look past it. Like Red Dead is a 10 out of 10 game.
Yeah.
And even if it is stuck at 30 frames, that doesn't take anything away from the quality or the experience that you get from playing
Yeah.
that game. So,
Yeah.
and that's something that we also said when we were watching it together. This game, I know Bethesda have not got the best reputation. I mean, they do make sort of like sorry, I can't bloody speak. Award-winning games of great renown. Everyone knows their games. Everyone's played their games.
Yeah.
This game, to me, just feels like no one else could have done it. I don't think another studio could pull this off.
The only
Yeah.
one's Rockstar, but they don't make games like this.
I agree.
Yeah.
No, but yeah,
This is like
Rockstar
their,
could, but
what would you call it? This is like their magnum opus. You know,
Yeah,
this
it
is
really
the game
is.
that
Yeah.
they've been trying to make since they started, and they're finally making it now.
yeah, and if it
And,
comes out as good as it looks, this will cement Bethesda as being one of, if not currently, maybe the best fucking game dev. Like, if everything meets our expectations, if the trailer is as good as the game is, and all of our hype is worth it, then there's
Yeah.
no argument. Like,
It's
gonna be-
it's promising what they've shown so far.